Okay guys, so here we go. So in the last video I talked about how he got the divorce and fraud, how I called and Miss Tammy, she told us that it wasn't on docket. After he comes to the kids' school, the shelter workers, knowing what we went through and what the kids were going through and knowing we were in danger and the abuse that we suffered, and also the fact that I was afraid and the children were afraid of the police department, and knowing what had went on with the police department, people around me that were helping me at that time said that, this is a really touchy subject. We do believe you. We see your videos. We talk to the children. We know what's happening. The abuse that you suffered is enough. Let's not saying anything about the police threatening you in court. Let's not saying anything about that, because the abuse that you have suffered, and that can be proven at the time, was enough to secure your safety here in New York. So he came to the kids' school and with the divorce papers, and they were going to remove the children. And the domestic violence center, knowing clearly what was going on, stepped in at that time. We filed paperwork for service in New York court with Peter Bradstreet. Sorry that you guys have to deal with the puppy barking. She's a pain in the butt. So Peter Bradstreet was the judge, and safety precaution proceedings started. And he told me at that time, there's nothing I can do about the divorce, but I can help you with child custody. What do you want to see happen here? I said, I don't really know. I don't care. I said, I don't care about my divorce. I said, I just want my children safe. And he looks at me, he said, well, there's two sides to every story. There's your side, and then there's his side, and then the truth is somewhere in the middle. He said, so let me hear his side. I've heard your side, and let me get to the truth in the middle and see if I can make sure that your children are safe. So the proceedings in New York has started. The children were with me. He went back to Alabama, wherever he came from. I started receiving threatening messages. Court started going on in New York. It was given back to Alabama for jurisdictional reasons. I was terrified. I was terrified because of the Millbrook police had threatened me. I was terrified of what Officer Knapp told me was going to happen, that I was going to go to jail for a very, very long time, and there was nothing anybody could do about it. Remember, she said that. That'll come into play a little bit later on when you hear after this part of my story. So, I'm scared. I'm terrified. I have faith in the court systems of New York, so I knew it would be fair. So I said, okay, we're going to be all right. And we started proceedings. There were an investigation done. The children were talked to. The children were also investigated by the authorities at the shelter, who already knew their story from when we came in. But we had a formal investigation done. He was indicated in child abuse. The kids were given a guardian at Liam. The guardian at Liam agreed that the children would be safer with me, and that there was some issues in the home with Shayla's Tanna and him being abusive. Was Christopher Ferratella, the children's guardian at Liam in New York's judgment. But because of UCGA laws, or I might not be saying that right, but some law that Alabama had jurisdiction over, the judge in Alabama did not want to let it go. He ordered it back to the court of Alabama, but the judge put in safeguards for our safety. Mind you, my lawyer told me not to say anything about the police or anything of that nature because the abuse was enough. The court case was given back to Alabama, which I am definitely afraid of Alabama. I am not ashamed to admit it. He keeps wanting to pull the case back to Alabama because he has full control over what goes on in Alabama because of the police department. I don't know how he was able to get this control, and you'll hear more about this later on in my story, but I don't want to go into that right now. But he was able to somehow or another gain control of Alabama in order to get his citizenship through vowel fraud. He was able to get his divorce through the same system without me knowing it, through fraud. I was threatened by the police. All this stuff is going on. I'm afraid of Alabama. Alabama's a racist place. The judge, Sibley Reynolds, on my case is not a nice person. Anyway, the judge put in precautions in New York, and this is what the judge said. The Child Protective Services of Alabama was supposed to look into the issues of the abuse and do something about it, but they refused. They refused the judge's order. They said they didn't get that paperwork. They're still saying they refused it. They refused that order. They say they don't do that. That's what was ordered, number one. Number two, the children were given a guardian at Liam that was supposed to contact their guardian, Liam Christopher Ferratella. I don't know if she ever contacted Chris, but she refused to talk to the children. She told me that she was only put on the case to satisfy New York, and that the only thing she was told to do, and that's all she's going to do, was to talk to Mr. Tanna and write her report. She didn't talk to the children. She didn't talk to me. She only talked to Mr. Tanna and wrote her report, and she told me she had already done that. She refused to talk to the children. When I called when the case was removed, to go back, and I called, and Alabama refused to adhere to these safety precautions, and also the Alabama police had already threatened my life. I actually called the Alabama Police Department at this time also, and Captain Fields told me, well, if you come back to Alabama, Miss Tanna, we ain't going to do nothing for you and protect you in any way, is what he told me. So I definitely was not going back to Alabama, because Judge Peter Bradstreet's safety precautions for my safety was not adhered to at all. Alabama refused to adhere to them. So the case moves on. It was supposed to go to Alabama. Shalish knew where I was at. He was parked outside my house in a white van. My neighbors told me. Me and the children escaped from our house that we had just got through the domestic violence program. And now, mind you, I said Shalish Tanna was in a white van with another Indian man. There's two of them parked outside my house in Bath, New York. My neighbor got wind of it and snuck me and the children out of the house. At that time, I did not have a car. I went to my mother, and she helped me get a car. And